Pirate Kings, Pirate Queens, non-binary monarchs of the sea. Hello, hello, how we doing? What's going on? I am currently in the process of recording the rest of the OP08 video. Thank you for all the support on part 1. I'm trying to get part 2 out to you ASAP, but I just recorded this deck profile, another new OP08 deck, and I wanted to, much like the Calgara profile during part 1, get this one out to you as soon as possible. So here is number 5, Charlotte Pudding. Now, as a player who started this game just as one of the biggest Purple Kaido enthusiasts out there, and then as soon as set 2 hit, feeling very, very lost because my guy just was not doing it anymore, wandering around from deck to deck with a brief stint in Blue Croc, pouring out for Blue Croc. Y'all hype for Joe Manganiello, I'm hype for Joe Manganiello, until Enel and Todoroki Katakuri basically became my new home, Big Yellow Man. Pudding seems very cool to me. Her leader effect is, when attacking, you may turn the top 2 life cards of your life face up, then add up to 1 Don from your Don deck as rested. So by making our life, by extension our triggers, the most contentious, potentially most game-swinging aspect of Yellow, public, which in my early thought process this may change, does help both players, and the disparity in how much it helps is going to come down to how well each of those players is able to play through the situation, and, to a degree, what those life are as well. She becomes Onigashima. Granted, she is a conditional Onigashima, and making it so that we can get that effect off more than once is going to be what we're building this deck around. That and, big 9-10 drops that we try and get out a turn early. Tenmom for sure, but Tenmom is not the end-all be-all of this deck. But I'll expand on that more in a bit. I want to talk about the trajectory to getting there at the moment. So turn 1, you will be at 1 Don going first, 2 Don going second. If you have a Pudding, you can play her to get your search going. But as I mentioned in Katakuri, depending on your hand, depending on what your curve is looking like, there are situations where you might want to save that Pudding for a few turns later on once you have seen more cards. Depending, if you really need cards, you could play Flampe. I am wary of it in my early testing, but that also might be because I'm worried about aggro. And I also might be comparing Pudding to Enel, given my own experience and the fact that in Enel, I'm going to keep on getting those life guaranteed. In Pudding, you can come back. You can recover a fair amount of life. It's just going to depend on how that game goes. It's not something you're definitely going to see or a state you are actively trying to get to. But whether or not Flampe is the play is going to be, I guess I'm saying situational, and how situational is going to depend on how testing goes. On turn 2, we'll be at either 3 or 4 Don. We can then use the ability to turn our top 2 life face up and get that 4th or 5th Don. Of course, if you have Brule in your hand, you can play her at this point if you don't feel like using your Don to invest in your attacks. I think it's going to be very matchup dependent. I'm still figuring out what situations that's going to be better in myself. But at that point, your next concern is how you're going to get your 1 or 2, potentially, if you're going first, extra Don on your 3rd turn. If you have Viola in your hand on turn 2, you can use your leader effect first, then play her. Then, cool, those life are back face down. Your ability is already set up for turn 3. There's always the chance your opponent swings into those 2 face-up life, and then you have the 2 life left. But 1, depending on the triggers, they might not do that. 2, they might not have the resources to do that. Again, it might just not be in their best interest to. And then, of course, being at 2 life on your 3rd turn in this deck, where we have such a high amount of non-counter cards, and the Yume disappear, which will eat into our hand size, that's precarious in the very small chance it actually happens. We want to be proactive about getting our 2nd activation off. And the options we have for that on turn 3 are the Star Deck 13 Newgate and the Set 8 Katakuri. Newgate on play allows us to add the top card of our deck to our life, then look at all of those life, place 1 on the top of the deck, and then rearrange them in any order. Do keep in mind that this rearranging does not flip the face-up life cards back down, but if you still have all 4 of your life, you are then able to put those ones on the bottom so that your top 2 are face down, and then your leader ability is live again. And then, of course, this lets you put your triggers in the optimal order, disappear at the bottom, beige, above that, or at the bottom if you don't have disappear, your blockers, all those things. It lets you try and plan ahead there. If you are going second and you are able to get that second leader activation off with this new gate or with Viola the previous turn, you are then set. You will be at 10 Don on your 4th turn. If you go first, however, and you want to be at 10 Don on turn 4, there may be situations where you're cool with 9, but personally, at least where I'm at with the deck so far, I'm trying to at least make sure I know what I need to get to 10. That is where the Karakuri from set 8 comes into play. On play, you may flip the top card of your life face down, and then add up to 1 Don from your Don deck and set it as active. And the sequencing with which we use him, plus whether he is going to be enough on his own to get that leader ability off, will depend on how much life we have at the start of that 3rd turn. If our opponent has been swinging into us, and we did take those first 2, we'll just have 2 face down life. We swing with Pudding, we then get to 7 Don, we play the Katakuri, flip that top life face down, we're at 8, then we're at 10 next turn. Of course, for the reasons that I outlined earlier, this is not something we can count on. Now, if we find ourselves in the exact opposite situation where our opponent has tried to starve us, it's a little more difficult. So, basic scenario, we start the turn at 6 Don, we have 2 life on top, face up, we have 2 life on the bottom, face down. This Katakuri is only flipping that top one face down. So if we start the turn by playing that Katakuri, then we've got that second to top life still face up. We cannot use our leader effect. We cannot get to 10 the next turn. Now, my Big Mom enthusiasts will know that we have Flampe in here, which could eat up one of our life. But in this exact situation, Flampe is not going to be of any help to us. If we play the Katakuri first, then Flampe is just getting rid of that already face down life. We're still in the same situation. If we play that Flampe first, we only have 5 Don left, we can't play the Katakuri. Now, I've just been recording this segment piece by piece, so I was not thinking about this when I talked about Flampe earlier for turn 1. This is where Flampe shines on your 2nd turn. If you use that leader ability turn 2 and then play a Flampe, of course, in the case where you don't have something like Viola, you end your turn with your top life face up, your bottom 2 face down, and then you're set. If your opponent does swing into you, you take that life, cool. Those last 2 life, they are face down. Your leader ability is set. You use that lead, you play the kata, you are going to be at 10. And you do have to do them in that order to get the ramp off the Katakuri as well, in this scenario. If your opponent doesn't attack you, you start your turn off with 3 life, you just reverse that order. You play the Katakuri, flip that top life face down, you have 1 active, 6 rested, you attack with your leader ability, then you get the top 2 face up with 1 face down at the bottom, you have 1 active, 7 rested. In both of those situations, you have that spare Don to play your Searcher, whether that is a Charlotte Pudding or the We Are Going to Claim the One Piece, which I forgot to mention earlier, and then you will be at 10 Don on turn 4. So basically, and if I'm wrong, fact check me here. I just basically went through this whole proof. I composed this in the past 10 minutes. If you are going first, you want to have Katakuri and Flampe in your hand by the time you are at turn 3, mulligan accordingly, if you want to have a surefire turn 4 10 Don. But in those situations where the pieces are not there to get you to 10 Don on turn 4, we do have this 9 cost Linlin from set 8. I did mention her in the Purple Luffy section, but as a refresher, on play, Don -1, trash 1 card from your hand, add up to 1 card from the top of your deck to the top of your life, then place up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 6 or less to the top or bottom of its owner's life, face up. Now, on paper, this, of course, costs less, has less power, and it is not as overwhelming advantage as the Tenma. You are, however, getting a 9k body and healing a life that is a significant play, even if you have to trash a card for it. And in those matchups where your opponent is going tall, yes, that ability to bring a character to life isn't going to be very helpful for you. But in my early perspective of this deck, I think that her biggest strength is the fact that she gives us a different method to gain advantage, to create some sort of disparity, or to at least stay afloat. Pudding's biggest weakness is aggro. Of course, if you've been hearing about Pudding, you've likely realize that Zoro is a terrible matchup, but she's also a bit unfavored against Reiju, Kalgara, Purple Luffy, all three of those being decks that are able to very efficiently get bodies out on the board, go wide from a relatively early point in time, which can overwhelm Pudding before she's able to make the most of that leader ability. And I'm not going to say that this card is necessarily enough to swing those matchups and make them favorable, but being able to remove one body from their board that's going to be what it takes in certain situations to at least get to the point where you can start putting your 10 drops out there. This is where the degenerate Enel player who loves to starve the opponent starts to, that part of my brain starts to fire off and get real excited. And this aspect of the deck feels to me like, a progression of OP03 Katakuri, when you would use that 8-cost Katakuri, put their big body they just played into the top of their life, then use the 10 Mom to get rid of it. From the, again, just couple of games I've played so far, in those early phases, we are making sure we can get to our top end as quickly as we can. But at that point, that's not the end of the game. In a sense, that's just the beginning, because then, in at least the matchups I have run into so far, which really have not been the best ones, so I don't know how they're going to apply across the board, but it feels like after that, it becomes a siege, a war of attrition. Does this mean Pudding's going to join the revolutionaries? Theory time. It's that same sort of game plan that Enel had, where you have to make sure, first and foremost, that you are not going to die next turn. Your opponent is not just going to be able to force their way through. And then you use the correct top-end card for the scenario you are in. 10-cost Big Mom is that power card. She is her. But she does not change the number of bodies that your opponent has on the board. If that one life she gives you is enough to stay alive, then yeah, start deleting their life, deny them of resources, and get closer to being able to close things out. But otherwise, Ace the 9-cost Lindland might be the move. If that one character your opponent needs is rested and they have a low hand size, then the Ace with Rush could be what it takes to stay alive in that case and still give you the life. But if everything's vertical, 9-cost Lindland could be the way to go. In summary, my theory, and we One Piece fans, we love our theories, is that in a vacuum, the 9-cost Lindland, the 10-cost Ace, they pave the way for the 10-cost Big Mom to be safe. Notwithstanding those situations where you just need a certain number of attacks to close the game, and that Ace is the way to do so. And then we rounded off with our 8 events. The 1-cost, let's go claim the One Piece, or whatever the actual title is. I just see a way to search Onigashima. Honestly, that's that's not this deck, but that's what the impact it's had on me. And you're the one who should disappear. With this many counterless characters, we need a way to filter them out and keep our hand events to stay alive. But as I just outlined here, it's very important to make the right decision for what you are discarding with that event. And, of course, we do have ways like the Newgate to put that trigger right on the bottom, which is powerful, degenerate, both. Maybe a little subjective as far as your take on that. For our card counts, that top end, that package, most of that package to get there is very much in the majority, pretty much unquestionable as far as their inclusion. Viola and Newgate, those are where we start to see people, diverge a little bit there. This might change as I actually get into games. I think that Viola is just a very, very consistent way to get to your leader ability. The Newgate, a little more situational, might not be as surefire, but it's also a question of how often do you need that, because there could be other ways to win with her that I am not thinking of. Frankie and Brûlé are, of course, even more flexible than those two. That's just extra defense to get us where we need to go. I like the idea, but that's just one thing that I've seen. There are other things we can try. As far as other defensive options go, we do have that Sanji, the 2K, and the blocker. Incredibly versatile. It doesn't seem to me, at least in this build, we're going to be playing him for 3 that often, if ever, really. Amande is a searchable 2K. All 3 of these Sanjis on this page are searchable through our Pudding. Miss All Sunday's another ramp option, which I am interested in that. I like the idea. Same with Bone Clay, gives us another out in those matchups where we have the tall characters, but those don't really seem to be the matchups where we need to cover our bases necessarily. Perospero is great. I'm just not sure we have the space for him at this point. Hakai, Ocean Sovereignty, whatever the translated name is, I haven't even looked at it yet. Don't -2, KO2, 6 cost or less characters. Worse, Purple Gravity Blade, but that's probably for the best. That's not as good. I always love seeing 9 cost Yamato, but I think at that point I'd rather be playing Enel. 7 cost Linlin's awesome play. It's a cool idea. Same with that 10 drop Kaido and Linlin. I am so excited just at this card's existence, even if there is just so much inherent risk if you don't have the perfect timing and implementation when you play it. And Onami does very well fit in with the concept of this deck as it has shaped itself for me. It's just, at that point, we only have so many slots in the deck. But if we do want to change those slots, we could either take the Frankies out, go for a full 4 of them, go in for the Sanjis if we want to bring our defense in a different direction, if we don't think we need the Newgate or the Viola, and the Miss All Sunday if we want another way to ramp and we're not trying to reorder our life as much. And there is Pudding. Of these new decks from OP08, this is definitely the one I'm most excited about. This is just such a cool intersection of playstyles, so many things I've loved about so many leaders in the past. The weakness that I, in my playstyle, always seem to fall into of aggro just ruining my day, but, something's gotta happen. There's some things are just gonna stay the way they are. For me, at least. Maybe. I'm not fully decided on a deck yet, but this is one of the ones I am most hype on. I'm probably gonna be picking up some 10 moms pretty soon. If you are new to this deck, if you haven't had a chance to really look into it yet, I hope that this has been helpful. I think I learned quite a bit actually just recording this personally. And if there is anything else that you are curious about, anything else you're thinking of trying, I would love to hear your thoughts as well. If you did enjoy this, let me know by leaving a like, and if you want to get notified as soon as OP08 by the Data Part 2 and future content come out, I am always incredibly grateful for another subscriber. Thank you to everyone who subscribed after OP08 by the Data Part 1. Super, super thankful to y'all. All I'm doing right now is working on OP08 by the Data Part 2. I wanted to get this out there in the meantime just because I know this is the other new deck people are curious about. Someone in the comments for part 1 said this was their main, and they were sad I didn't go over the list, and I was sad I couldn't give them the list. So I just want to get this one out there as soon as possible. Expect part 2 ASAP. This is Sakura Kingdom. I'm going to keep recording. I'm just going to keep yapping the rest of the day, and I will see you real soon.